And it sounds like we're being recorded. Hope everybody's okay with that. Right. Well, thanks everybody for coming today. It's really exciting for us to be able to launch the Ungulate Atlas today, the Global Ungulate Atlas. We're super excited about doing this. My name is Grant Hopcraft. I'm a professor of conservation biology at the University of Glasgow. I'm also the current lead on the Serengeti Biodiversity Program, which is where I do all my research, primarily in wildebeest and zebra and eland migrations. I'm also a part of the scientific advisory panel for UM. So a very big welcome to everybody here, and also a really big thank you to all the speakers who we have lined up. Just as a sort of a background, brief reminder of what the GUM is all about, and that is really our primary objective, is to create an atlas that reveals the roots of all the world's iconic and maybe not so iconic ungulate migrations. And we've been working for a few years on this, and we're at the point now today where we're actually ready to release the first few maps. The objective is a freely available map for, available to government officials, public. And on top of that, I think what we'd like to do in order to sort of mark the event is we've got a really excellent list of speakers lined up today who have experience in policy, international guidance, and even frontline conservation of migratory species. And here's our list. Thanks for doing that behind the scenes team, getting the list up. One thing before we start, we're going to have opportunity for questions and answers and things like that at the end of the presentation series. We have at the bottom of your screen, you might see a thing that says more, 3 little dots, and says more. And under that, you'll see questions and answers. We'd encourage people to put, if it's not already under your heading already, Q&A. If you have questions for any of the speakers, please put them down in that. We'll also have some time near the end where we will have an opportunity for you to raise your hand. Hopefully everybody's familiar with how to raise their hand. I think it's a reaction. It's under reaction button to raise your hand. And we will take questions at the end. So without further ado, I would take the opportunity to introduce Amy Frankel. And Amy, really, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for offering to open the event for us. For those of you who are joining, Amy has over 30 years of experience in international environment policy and law. She's worked extensively for the United Nations, US government, such as roles as the director of UNEP for North America. She's currently the executive secretary for the Convention of the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, which we all know in its short form, which is Convention of Migratory Species, CMS. So, Amy, thanks very much for being here today, and I'm going to pass the floor over to you to open the ceremonies for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Grant. And I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So today, as Grant mentioned, we are celebrating the launch of an amazing new scientific and policy tool, the first online interactive map of some of the world's most incredible land animal migrations. The new atlas brings together data on hooved animals, which are also known as ungulates, which include many familiar species such as deer, antelope, and wild horses. Knowing how these wild animals migrate is essential to better understanding what we must do for their conservation and for their management. And this is exactly what the new atlas is about. This groundbreaking tool was developed through the efforts of the Global Initiative on Ungulate Migration, GUM. You see the logo on several speakers' backdrops, which brings together an international team of over 80 scientists in partnership with the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, CMS. Some species like the guanaco found in South America, the alpine ibex, and the Mongolian gazelle undertake some of the most remarkable migrations on Earth. They migrate across vast distances to find food, escape harsh weather, and raise their young. Their journeys demonstrate the incredible resilience and adaptability of these species, shaped over millions of years. But these animals are facing increased threats. Earlier this year, we launched a landmark report known as the State of the World's Migratory Species, released at our 14th Conference of the Parties in Uzbekistan. And it found that habitat loss and fragmentation, as well as overuse, are among the top causes of decline for migratory species. Millions of kilometers of new roads are being planned over the next few decades around the world. And while infrastructure can be vital for sustainable development, it can cause significant habitat loss and fragmentation and can interrupt the movement and cause mortality of migratory species. Thus, it is critically important to ensure that infrastructure minimizes negative impacts to biodiversity, including migratory species. CMS parties have long recognized the importance of this idea of ecological connectivity for migratory species, species that rely on a network of specific habitats for their breeding and feeding throughout their life cycles, sometimes thousands of miles apart. Ecological connectivity is also a key component of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which is included in Goal A and in many of its targets, including maybe the most well-known one, known as the 30 by 30 target, which aims to conserve 30% of land and sea. Now, in order to succeed in the conservation of migratory species, we need to identify those areas that are important habitat, protect it, and ensure that these animals can access it. The Atlas is a major contribution towards this goal. The Atlas is part of a larger effort, a very ambitious mandate of our treaty of CMS to map the migrations of all of the migratory species of wild animals worldwide. One other major component of this effort is the Eurasian African Bird Migration Atlas, which we launched several years ago. This effort is essential for governments to achieve their biodiversity objectives. I want to close by extending my sincere thanks to the members of GUM's Science Advisory Board, to all of the scientists who have contributed their data and their efforts to developing this atlas, to our many partners, to parties of CMS, and CMS colleagues who have been helping to make this atlas a reality. Your work is making a real difference in the conservation of migratory species, and I want to give our thanks.
There we go. Can you, yeah, thanks. Thanks for unmuting me. Thanks, Amy. That was great. And I really appreciate those opening comments. And really, it's a great honor for us as scientists also to be working under the Convention on Migratory Species. So I really want to thank you for that, for what you've afforded us there. Our next speaker, Clara Nobe, many of you are going to be know Clara from her work from reports and training, particularly on, at least I know Clara from, the African Carnivore Initiative and guidelines for the conservation of African lions. Of course, all the things that tend to eat ungulates. So maybe from the other side here, Clara. And I really want to thank you also for participating today, and being able to share your vision or the vision of CMS and the GUM interaction here. So please, Clara, over to you as well.
Well, thank you so much, Grant, and thanks to all the colleagues that have joined this call today. I just want to go a little bit more into some of the mandates that we have following up on what the Executive Secretary has already mentioned. So next slide, please. As the name of the convention already says, the convention is really all about protecting migratory species. So that does not only address the species itself, but of course also the habitat and the routes that they need to take during their life cycles. In CMS, of course, given that it is a multilateral environmental agreement, it's also about international cooperation. So the migration that is particularly addressed and protected within CMS is the migration that takes place across international borders. But also, once a species is listed on CMS, then the range states are also required to protect domestic migrations. As you probably all know, CMS protects not only terrestrial species such as ungulates, but also avian and marine species. And it's quite an old convention, having entered into force in 1983. But as we all know, with increasing habitat loss, increasing infrastructure development, is becoming more and more important. CMS currently has 133 parties worldwide. I think this is also important for Guillaume, as it also means there is a lot of governments that can use the Guillaume Atlas and work with the initiative. Next slide, please. One of the main objectives of CMS is contained in Article 3 4b, and that requires parties that are range states of a migratory species, which is listed in Appendix 1, to they shall endeavor to prevent, remove, compensate for, or minimize the adverse effects of activities or obstacles that seriously impede or prevent the migration of the species. So this is contained in the convention of the of CMS in the text of the convention, and that obviously makes it a really, really important objective of it. Next slide, please. However, there's also several resolutions and decisions related to connectivity or related to migration. And one of those resolution 14.1 on the Samarkand strategic plan for migratory species has as goal 2 the habitats and ranges of migratory species are maintained and restored, supporting their connectivity. And then in goal 3, that captures that by 2032, the direct mortality of migratory species caused by human-made infrastructure is significantly reduced to levels that are not harmful to the species viability. So again, you see here the parties, range states, they have made a big commitment for which they require data that is contained in the Atlas. Resolution 1416 on ecological connectivity takes a bit of a broader approach to this whole issue, as it is not, as it really is trying to protect the whole migration system and taking into account also the type of habitat that is required for the species when they move between different habitats. Contained in resolution 7.2 on impact assessment and migratory species is a request to the parties to develop and to use environmental impact assessments and also strategic environmental assessments. So again, data will be required by them when using these kind of tools. And then, as Amy already mentioned, the convention agreed on developing an atlas on animal migration, which at the moment is mainly covering bird migration. So we are extremely happy that now with Guillaume, we also have an atlas and data on ungulates migration. And then lastly, a decision also taken by the last CMS COP in February this year on infrastructure development in migratory species is requiring the compilation of distribution data, migration data, but also asking parties to contribute and to submit data on their infrastructure developments, ongoing but also future, so that these different data sets can be combined and mapped. And the same decision also is asking for the provision of resources and capacity building to governments so that they can use the data that is being compiled, collected, and that it can be used by funding institutions and infrastructure developers. So again, these the fact sheets, the atlas, are really extremely important to help us implement this decision and make the data and resources available to decision makers. Next slide, please. We also have, as many of you know, several initiatives. One is the Central Asian Mammoth Initiative that covers a lot of ungulate species. And again, within the program of work of this initiative is also addressing different, addressing the migration routes, conserving migration routes of the species. And with a new initiative now adopted by the COP on Sahelo-Saharan megafauna, again, a lot of the ungulates that you are working on, or that hopefully will be worked on, require the compilation of data and making it available to decision makers in the countries. So again, what Guillaume is producing is really extremely important, is directly helping to implement the program of works of these two initiatives. And we hope that we can bring you into these initiatives to support the range states in working on these. Next slide, please. Lastly, we have already produced some guidance and guideline materials related to infrastructure at the moment. These are only applicable to Central Asia, but with Guillaume and the new fact sheets, I think it would be extremely helpful for the countries if if this can also be made available to other regions in the world. And so looking forward to working with Guillaume on this. Thank you very much. So as the vision of CMS and how we work with Guillaume is really contained in the various mandates that we are receiving from COP. But as you have seen, it's already right in there, and I think that is the basis for our cooperation. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for doing that, Clara. And really nice to see sort of an overview of how this all fits in. I think that's really useful. Right, so next I would like to introduce Matt Kaufman. Matt is a member of our scientific advisory panel for Guillaume as well, and also one of the founding members of Guillaume. He's based in Wyoming at the University of Wyoming, where he's a wildlife biologist with US Geological Survey. He's heading up also the Wyoming Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit at the university. And one thing, I'm just going to go slightly off piste here, Matt, before I hand over to you. I want to say also, Matt was the winner of the Aldo Leopold Award in 2024. So big congratulations, Matt, for contributions in the field of ungulate migration and sustainable contributions to conservation of mammals and their habitat. So big congratulations, Matt. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks. Let's go to the next slide. Well, thanks, Grant. I appreciate the introduction. Well, I'm very excited to be here on this day to launch the Atlas of Ungulate Migration. And what I'm going to do is give you a very brief introduction to the Atlas, along with some context about how and why we created it. Next slide. So ungulates are very important for ecosystems across the world, but as has already been mentioned, they are threatened. Most migratory populations are threatened, and linear infrastructure is a growing risk for these populations. Next slide. And these days, there's actually a lot of tracking data on these migratory ungulates, and these days, we can take this tracking data and conduct statistical analyses to create detailed maps of their migrations. Next slide. And so this group got together several years ago and created the Global Initiative on Ungulate Migration. Here I'm showing you the science advisory team who has really provided the vision and a lot of the logistics and work behind this effort. I want to recognize also our CMS partners who have done a lot of work, as you've already heard, to integrate this work into CMS. And then Stefan, Melinda, and Janie are full-time GUME staff who have done a lot of the legwork on the maps and coordination that have brought us to this point. And then finally, the Atlas is a digital atlas. So the design and web programming was conducted by the Infographics Lab at the University of Oregon, YGISC at the University of Wyoming, and Josh Gage at Gage Cartographics. Next slide. And then, of course, the migration maps that are provided in the Atlas are underpinned by empirical tracking data. And so this work would not be possible without the commitment of data providers, managers, and researchers who are on the ground capturing these animals, putting collars on them, and collecting the tracking data, and then committing to share their data, their expertise, and their time to this initiative so those migrations can be mapped. Next slide. And go ahead and hit the next button, which will start the video. And so this video is running a little smaller, but so this is 20 migrations now, and they range the gamut from wildebeest who move across the Serengeti National Park, which you can see here. Go ahead and just let the video go. Oh, okay. See if you can. There we go. Okay, so so a broad diversity of migrations, 20 migrations. Here's the wildebeest moving from dry season to wet season. Oh, that doesn't look very good. So I'll just go through this. So then maybe it'll run. So we have zebra moving from Namibia to Botswana. Then we have the saiga antelope moving across the vast steppe of Kazakhstan. Then we also have kulan or wild ass who make 200 to 300 kilometer nomadic movements across the Gobi in eastern Mongolia. And of course, we also have reindeer that make migrations in Scandinavia, and then additional mule deer who move across working landscapes in the American West. And finally, one migration in South America, the guanaco, who make aggregate migrations in elevational in that country. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a map of the migrations that we're announcing today. We're just scratching the surface of all the migrations that are out there, but this is a great first start. Next slide. And this is basically the atlas. So it's a digital atlas. So the web page, I think Janie has posted a link to the web page in the question and answer. So the atlas basically curates all the migration maps. So you can go on there, find a migration. From there, you can download the GIS files. You can download the individual fact sheets, which I'm showing you here, and in nice maps that our cartographers have put together. And you can also connect to these migrations through a third-party web applications through our API. Next slide. a little bit more about the fact sheets. So the fact sheets have really been created by the data providers, so the folks that know these animals on the ground and collected the data. So there's a little information about the population, the species, technical information about the data, and the partnerships that were involved. Next slide. And so one of the findings that sort of emerges by putting this first batch of migrations together is that these migrations are threatened, many of them, by a variety of factors, but linear infrastructure, the things that we build on the landscape, is one of the most important. And so it is our hope that countries, conservation NGOs, development banks, and many other stakeholders will use these maps to better plan for conservation development as these, to sustain these migrations as these landscapes are changing. Final slide. And I just want to thank our funders and partners, especially the Wildlife Conservation Network, Knobloch Family Foundation, the George Restore Foundation, for helping us get to this point. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Matt. That was really interesting to put together, and I really appreciate that. Just for anybody who's just joined, remember, if you have questions, please use the question and answer tab at the bottom of your screens, and we'll be getting to those question and answers. So please, if you have questions for any of the speakers so far, just jot them down there, and we'll get to those questions near the end. Great. Okay, so our next speaker, Nandia Dejid. Nandia, I'd really like to thank you again. You're coming in from Mongolia, and I realize there's a time difference here. It's probably quite late with you, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm not exactly sure, but again, I really appreciate you coming. Nandia is a wildlife ecologist born and raised actually in Mongolia. She's a postdoctoral researcher currently at Senckenberg Nature Research Society for Germany. Nandia's research really focuses on the interface of wildlife movement and rangeland ecology in temperate grasslands. She's dedicated to the preservation of these Mongolian grasslands and these vast landscapes, which are, unique and iconic for many of these migrations. And she's contributed several maps to GUM. So I'd like to also note that. And Nandia is going to be talking to us a little bit more about the conservation and development in the Central Asia. So Nandia, over to you, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm joining Mongolia at this time, and it's 10:30 p.m. here. So welcome to my talk about ungulate movements and rapid linear infrastructure development happening in Mongolia. Next slide, please. Next one, please. So the first global assessment of migratory animals already emphasized that the extinction risk of migratory animals and population declines and human activities are main drivers. So next slide, please. Next one. So there is an urgent action to identify key sites for migratory species and also map migration corridors to protect those animals from human activities. Next, please. So in particular, the report also emphasizes that the species occurring in Asia are the most threatened. Next, please. So then I would like to share a case, what's happening in the Mongolian steppe ecosystem. The Gobi steppe ecosystem in Mongolia is a globally significant ecoregion in terms of biodiversity and also intactness. For example, the Gobi Desert ecosystem in Mongolia, next please, provides the important habitat for the largest population of Asiatic wild ass, and also the steppe ecosystem is the core range of Mongolian gazelles. Next, please. Next. And in these ecosystems, those animals undertake long-distance nomadic movements. Here, I just want to show you one example for our single Mongolian gazelle moved over 18,000 kilometers in 5 years, and you can see the movement scale that connects the Russian border all the way to the Chinese border in the south. Next, please. But recently, there is a rapid development, especially linear infrastructure development is happening in the Mongolian Gobi Desert, especially in the southern part of the Gobi. For example, during the COVID time, in 2 years, 900 kilometers of new railways constructed across the core range of Kulan habitat and also Goitre gazelle. But the key question is those railways are permeable and whether there is any wildlife-friendly crossing structure exists. Next, please. We identified 3 different types of potential crossing structures. Here you can see on this slide, for example, box culverts and level passes and open span bridges. Next, please. However, the movement data that we collected after the construction showed that those animals are encountering difficulties in crossing those railways, even there are some potential crossing structures. So here I want to highlight only one case. If you look at the panel D, this individual Kulan moved over 140 kilometer long stretch of railway, and she didn't find any suitable crossing area to cross this railway. Next, please. So this is basically what's happening in the Gobi Desert ecosystem in Mongolia, but the Mongolian steppe ecosystem is also unique in terms of intactness and least fragmented landscape, and also, please, next. So then it provides a critical habitat for these large-scale nomadic movements of Mongolian gazelle. In this system, gazelles move in large herds, and the nomadic movement is very important, their survival to cope with environmental unpredictable environment. For example, they need to avoid extreme events to survive. They need to move long distance across this landscape. But since 2007, researchers are monitoring gazelle movements. So under this GUM initiative, next please, we mapped movement paths of, next please. Is under a GUM initiative, we mapped movement tracks of our 100 Mongolian gazelles monitored between 2007 to 2023. On this map, we can see that gazelles don't have any specific movement corridors. They move between protected areas, and also they don't use any specific protected area. So that means the landscape scale conservation actions are very important for sustain these long distance nomadic movements. Next, please. And also we showed even an individual gazelle movement. And here we can see that ecological connectivity is even important just for protecting single animal in this unpredictable ecosystem. And at the moment, there are 2 different types of impermeable barrier across the Mongolian gazelle habitat. The one is the Trans-Mongolian Railway, which is in black, and also the fenced border areas, which you can see in yellow. Next, please. In addition to fenced Trans-Mongolian Railway on fenced borders, the Mongolian government is planning over 800 kilometer new railways across the steppe ecosystem. And there is a discussion now, maybe the construction will begin this year in 2024. But at the moment, we really don't know, or there is no discussion among practitioners and researchers and decision makers, what kind of crossing structures need to be and where those crossing structures should be placed across this big landscape to protect these species, the nomadic movements, and also the intactness of the Mongolian steppe ecosystem. Next, please. So we hope that the Mongolian government will use those maps and also this online interactive system to make a better plan to save this species and also spearhead sustainable development that allows preserving this vast landscape with the large herd of nomadic ungulates in the steppe ecosystem. With that, thanks very much.
Great. Thanks very much for that, Nandi. It's really interesting to see the Mongolian perspective, and thanks for staying up as well. Next, we're going to go to Zimbabwe, where we've got Patience Kandiwa. Professor Patience, thank you very much for joining us. Patience is currently the Director of International Conservation Affairs for Zimbabwe National Parks, where she's worked for over 15 years. She brings a huge number of years of scientific research, sustainable development, and international wildlife policy to the discussion, also previous work in several transfrontier national parks. And Patience, thanks so much for talking to us today about GUM's impact on the local management in Zimbabwe. So over to you, Patience.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join this panel. I think what is very important about this whole initiative in terms of the implications and how we see it from the grassroots standpoint is the fact that it actually crystallizes the value of migration as an essential component of our socio-ecological system. And I think it really paints a picture which helps in our understanding of the seasonal or essential migrations that happen in our landscapes, particularly looking at the Hwange and the Kavango Zambezi transfrontier conservation areas landscape.
Patience, can you hear us?
And also the wildlife and tourism economy that such migrations and seasonal movements or ungulate migrations support. And also just not only through the socio-ecological lens and understanding sometimes what is known can be managed, but what is not known may not be managed. So when we know where these ungulates actually pass through, it's very important as it aids and informs our decision-making processes. And also considering the threats that ungulates and several other wildlife species are facing, not only in our part of the world, but globally, such as habitat loss and also fragmentation of the wildlife movement corridors that are linking key habitat components. This kind of initiative, which maps
Oh, we may have lost Patience. Yeah, let's just keep an eye out on if she's able to get back in, maybe Janie and
sorry, my network had dropped a bit.
Oh, good. You're good.
So it provides us with data, which is very important for decision making. But also, I think look that is going to influence, it's going to really influence the bottom-up policy making processes that will help us as a country and also as wildlife managers to make sure that we implement and effectively protect the wildlife. But also, the other implication is on the application of new advances in science, such as biotelemetry and also remote sensing tools, as well as other GIS tools. I think this is really very important because it makes it much easier to manage threats and as well as prioritizing migration pathways to identify human-wildlife conflict hotspots, and also using other multi-criteria analysis, which this atlas provides such data. And looking at the bottom-up processes and also implementation of CMS decisions and resolutions on the ground, I think it's something very important that, of course, when resolutions are made, at the end of the day, what matters the most is what happens on the ground after all is said and agreed. Law enforcement and anti-poaching strategy. So this really is really quite an exciting episode for us. And the global initiative on ungulate migration is really demonstrating the power of collaboration and very intricate and yet very delicate connections that paint a picture of ungulate migration, not only in Hwange National Park, but also in the contiguous landscape of the Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Areas. But I think we are going to see a much richer picture when we look at other transfrontier conservation areas, because I personally believe that the vision and the main objective of the CMS convention and also even this initiative is shared, also overlaps very neatly with the dream or the SADC vision for transfrontier conservation areas. And it's exciting that we already see the nexus of science, policy, and practice on the ground when we see these the interconnectedness and linkages and the need, which is demonstrated by mapped migrations on the ground, that as countries that are neighboring and sharing these resources, we actually need to work together. And we believe that as Zimbabwe, we will continue to do our part in further monitoring our ungulates and also pursuing collaborative research to make the atlas much more richer, so that we can have even much more in-depth understanding of the needs of the wildlife species that we all seek to conserve and protect. I believe it's just the beginning, and we are going to tie it to several other ongoing projects also, such as the Room to Roam initiative, among others that we are working with our partners. Thank you very much. We're so much looking forward to the bigger picture and the richer picture, and to do our part in contributing more data and monitoring more migration pathways in our landscapes. Considering also that Zimbabwe hosts the second largest population of elephants in the world, we're so much keen to know where they are going and what is threatening movement pathways, and how we can also use these tools in understanding the threats that the local communities living in these landscapes are facing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patience, and thank you for persevering through the internet connection there, and also some very good insights about how this is going to be applied for Zimbabwe. What a pleasure it is to work with you all there. So next is Lisa Faraway. So Lisa is a senior environmental specialist at the World Bank. Again, Lisa, thanks so much for joining us today. It's a real privilege to have you here. For those of you who don't know Lisa, she's a program manager for the Global Wildlife Program at the World Bank. She currently leads the GEF finance side of things for the Global Wildlife Program. And brings so much experience with illegal and unsustainable wildlife trade, promoting human-wildlife coexistence, strengthening wildlife-based economies. So Lisa, thanks again for coming today, and we're really looking forward to your talk about sustainable development and ecological connectivity. Over to you. Lisa, are you there?
Yeah, I was just waiting for someone to unmute me, but it's happened now. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Congratulations on this launch to everyone involved. It's a really important initiative to increase availability and accessibility of data. I just want to briefly touch on its value from a development perspective, from the point of view of an MDB and as the manager of the Global Wildlife Program, which is financed by the Global Environment Facility and brings together almost 40 countries working together to address threats to wildlife. So I'll briefly touch on 3 ways. So first, we've heard about it so much already, how this atlas is going to help identify and avoid threats to habitat fragmentation from infrastructure development. And Andy elegantly profiled the situation in Mongolia, but just to profile the scale of this investment globally. So McKinsey estimates the world will need to spend over $55 trillion on new infrastructure over the next 15 years, $55 trillion. And 90% of new road construction is expected to occur in development countries. So the risks there are obviously very significant. If you look at the World Bank spends $120 billion a year in developing countries. A lot of that is on infrastructure. And data like this has such potential to influence that investment. So at the World Bank, all investments are required in accordance with Environment and Social Framework Standard 6 on biodiversity to avoid, prevent, and mitigate impacts on biodiversity. And this is managed through detailed impact assessments and planning. And these assessments are only as good as the data that underpins that investment. So the people preparing them need clear data to know, are there migration routes through this planned investment site? How is wildlife using the habitats in this area? So we're pleased to say at the World Bank, we're talking to the Global Initiative about integrating this data into the World Bank geospatial platform to make it accessible for all operations and connecting through API. Matt, I have no idea what that means, but Harsh is on the call, and I know he's talking to you guys about making sure we get this data into World Bank system. Second, how can we use the Atlas to help increase and inform direct investment in nature? So how can information in the Atlas inform conservation action? How can I identify opportunities to restore habitats, to build landscape connectivity, tell us where an ecological corridor needs to be built? Where do new protected or conserved areas need to be established for migratory species? Where are there opportunities for nature-based tourism to provide funds for conservation and local communities? Patients touched on this already. And really importantly, how can this information be used to help better manage human-wildlife conflict? If you look at the Global Wildlife Program, so many of the countries involved in that say this is one of their primary wildlife management concerns. It's across all regions, many species groups. I noticed, Matt, you've got an elephant migration hiding in your Ungulate Atlas. So having data on how wildlife use landscapes, critical to help identify where are the human-wildlife conflict hotspots to prioritize management, and how might these shift in the future as the climate changes. Super valuable. Finally, this initiative, I think, highlights how sharing information and collaboration is critical. At the Global Wildlife Program, I think we're in the same business as Amy and Clara at the CMS. We're here to help facilitate countries work together on wildlife management. And I think this data is really useful to promote transboundary cooperation. These migration maps can help governments identify how a wildlife using borders and work out how to collaborate on their management, where do habitats need protection, what are the threats they need managing, and develop transboundary responses. Congrats again to the team. Great to see this data that's been collected is being used in this way, not sitting on a shelf, and it's really forming a practical tool that we look forward to being seen used to inform decision-making. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lisa, and I really appreciate it. Those were some sobering figures that you gave us there, so quickly making note of those. Thanks again. Our final speaker today is Malik Morjan from South Sudan. Malik, it's really an honor to have you here as well. Malik completed his PhD in the University of Massachusetts, where he also received the National Geographic Emerging Explorers Award. Malik has worked in South Sudan for the Ministry of Wildlife Conservation and Tourism. He was also Undersecretary to the Minister. He's now the head of the Department for Wildlife Science at the School of Natural Resources in Juba. And Malik has since 1999 on these migrations of kob and tiang, which are now the most abundant migratory species in the world. The recent census is over 4 million animals migrating in the system. So please, Malik, I'm going to hand over to you, and it's a great pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, and the GIM team. I would like to congratulate you that the long hearing view of the Atlas has been given birth today, and we hope to see it progressing well. So next slide. The ungulate migration in South Sudan recently came into news that it is the biggest in the world. And it looks to have surprised people, but they have been existing for long. Only that they are the least studied, they are the least publicized, and they are the least known across the world. I hope you are hearing me well.
Yep, we can hear you very well. Thanks, Malik.
Okay. So surveys that have been done by the African parks over the last 2 years has produced these numbers. They look amazing. We have over 4 million cobs, 300,000 tiangs, over 300,000 Mongol gazelles, and over 100 Bohor reedbuck. Those species, they congregate together during the rainy season. The migration happens in this landscape. It is the area east of the Nile, River Nile, up to the border of Ethiopia. It encompasses about 40,000 square kilometers. So all those animals, they congregate here during the rainy season, and they spend about 6 to 7 months. And then during the dry season, they go on their migrations, which you will see on these maps. So next slide. I want to give a highlight here because they are least known in terms of kob movement. Slide is not moving. Yeah, this map shows the kob movements, white-eared kob movement. As I said, here is the rainy season in the Badingilo National Park. During dry season, they move eastwards to Boma National Park and spend about 3-4 months of dry season from December up to March. And then in April, they start coming back. But in between those 3-4 months, they also cross into Ethiopia in these areas of Gambela swamps. And we can look at this map. The Badingilo National Park is completely encompassed within an oil concession map. And this is an area of concern. Here we have a study that conducted in 2009, this group of movement, and this one in 2016 and 18. And both studies showed that this migration was spent during the quite of their time in areas that floating over oil reserve. Next. Next slide. Yeah, as I said, they are the least studied. What's wrong with my slides? In this map also, it's showing the other species, the tiang, also spending the wet season here in Badingilo National Park, and then during their migrations, they move up north in Ungulate Plains, and there is no any protected area here. Only they are moving within an oil concession area. They go about 300-400 kilometers and they cross into the Sud wetlands. And in this area, they are not protected. Next. So this map shows the two species together. Cop moved to the east, northeast. Tiang moved to north, and then they congregate here for 5 to 6 months in Badingil National Park. That's where the breeding takes place. The young will rear up and then they start moving. So any threats to this area, it threatens the whole migrations. And the lice I have is for only 2 species, the cop and tiang, but the other 2 species, the Mangala gazelle and the redback, unfortunately, during those years, they were not tagged. Only last year when the African Park did their tagging, they put for them tags, but we are waiting to see their data coming up and it will reflect into these maps. Next. So the 4 migratory species in South Sudan, as we treat them one because they congregate in this small area over half of the year, they face the same threats. Number 1 is the human activities and settlements. In the country, about the past 20 years and so, we have gone through a number of wars, special the Liberation War. During that time, people have moved out and they're forced to move out from their home. Now, as they're coming back to settle down, there are a lot of activities that impact on wildlife in general. And also, as peace is taking shape in the country also, the government goes embark on development projects. And all of them pose some threats to the species. The slide is not moving. Yeah, major threat is poaching. And poaching is posed because always there is hunger gap. So food insecurity is a problem. And people in the area, in these particular areas, usually face with the incidences of floods that move them out from their home and then they come back. So it's part of resilience. People resort to living on wildlife. But of recent, the poaching have taken commercial shape because those who do the poaching, they now have sophisticated arms, and also there's ready market in the nearby cities, like city of Juba. So the other major threats is development projects, as there is no way the country has to get developed. And some major projects that now on the area of migration is the roads. There are a number of highways have been planned. One is already under construction, and most of them are running either parallel to the migration or cross-cutting. And they, in the long run, will pose major threats, and unless studies have been done, conducted, and another threat also facing this migration is the development of oil and gas. And as is shown in the map, most of the area of the migration is covered by exploration maps. And one of them is already concession out, activities have started, but environmental studies are ongoing. We hope that they will put a good solution for the migrations. Mining is also in place, but currently at the small scale, mostly artisanal mines. And if time goes by, industrial mining will come and it will pose more threats, particularly in Boma National Park, because of their geological Yes. So climate change also is putting on a problem, and these areas of migration for the last 3 to 4 years have seen floods, and our fear is that when the floods turn into droughts, it will deprive them of water resources and grass resources and green resources and so forth. And the last but least listed here as a threat is limited data and limited knowledge. As I said at the beginning, that these are the least studied. There are least, very least chances for doing studies here and research here and there. So we in South Sudan here, we're looking out for collaborations to find out solutions to these threats that are facing these migrations. Otherwise, as we are declaring them now as the biggest in the world, tomorrow with these problems or these potential problems, they are going to run down as the least one in the world. So here I stopped.
Thank you,
Back
Malik.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really interesting and good to see all those maps and the data coming in from South Sudan. It's just, it's really impressive to see all of that work. So I realize we're at the top of the hour. It's going to be very late for Mongolia, the rest of the areas waking up. So please, I realize several of you might have to go. And also, before you go, I just wanted to say a very big thank you to all the presenters. We will try and stick around. We've got some questions on question and answer. So I propose that for anybody who can stay, we stay for another 10 minutes just to respond to some questions for anybody who has those. Anybody else who has to leave, a very big and hearty thanks for your contributions and also your participation. And please, the flyer and the contact for the Atlas are in the chat. I think Jenny's put that in the chat. Please have a look at the Atlas, download files, play with them, participate if you have data sets coming in. We would love to work with all of you. So perhaps we'll transition over towards questions. Shall we do that? Okay. Yeah, Janie, you've already got the Atlas up there in the question and answer section. So are there plans to add more ungulate species to the Atlas? I can already see one critical important migratory species that travels long distances that is not included. We'd love to hear which one that one is. Who's that from? Tarita, is that how you pronounce your name? Sorry if I've got that wrong. But maybe I'll pass that question to Matt about plans for more ungulate species. Maybe Matt, you want to respond to that? And could I ask somebody to unmute Matt, and maybe Tarita if Tarita's still on the line?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Well, the quick question is, yeah, absolutely. This is like the Atlas 1.0, so the first edition, the first 20 migrations, and the goal is for this to be a living atlas where we continue to add new species. To date, we have essentially, sort of worked with willing partners who had migratory data, had tracking data that they were willing to share. And so we're constantly on the lookout for new migratory populations that have tracking data. We also have plans to include indigenous knowledge and historical information. There are a couple migrations that have a little bit of that already on this first 20. So this is the first edition, and probably in 6 to 9 months, there'll be a second edition with another 10 to 12 migrations. And so part of this is, yeah, we're absolutely looking for additional partners who are interested in working with us to map migrations of the species that they study.
Yeah, and maybe Tarita, if you have the species that you have in mind, maybe either maybe put it in the chat or send some form of communication, or if you're unmuted, maybe you could let us know. Yeah, maybe I'll just move on to Kara's question, which is kind of related, Matt. Just maybe before you mute yourself, I'm going to pass this on to you. And Kara's question is there a way for, it's kind of related to Rita's question, really asking about prioritized regions and how we are prioritizing this, what time frame on those populations. So yeah, do you want to go ahead with that, Matt? Prioritization.
Sure. Yeah, I wish I could say that we had a prioritization. One could imagine that, you know, so many of these migrations are threatened, as we've discussed, and one could imagine sort of a triage type of approach where we look at the migrations that are most threatened versus those that are in intact landscapes and quite stable, and we prioritize the mapping of the most threatened one. Unfortunately, we really don't have that assessment, that sort of threat assessment, so that would allow us to identify which migrations are most threatened and in most need of mapping and conservation. That's something that I think we might get to as we continue to develop this information. But right now, we've been fairly opportunistic in trying to develop partnerships with partners who have tracking data. And so I think we will, you know, it's certainly the goal to be more strategic. Like, for example, we've been working for several months now to get the data sharing agreements in place for the white-eared cob. That's obviously a priority, and that will hopefully be included in the next edition. But yeah, so we're sort of figuring out the prioritization as we go, also within the constraints of who has tracking data and is willing to participate with the global initiative.
Yeah, so please, if you do have tracking data and want to participate, please get in touch. Good questions. And I think there's another question from Amina, which kind of leads on from this, and asking what kind of data would be is going to be downloadable and in which format from the Atlas. Matt, perhaps you're the best person to answer that question as well.
I see there's a note in there.
Yeah, how do we open these notes? I'm not too sure how we open these notes.
I guess I'll just give the quick answer to that question. So what are available on the Atlas, and again, the link is at the very top in Janie's comment. What's available on the Atlas are the map files themselves. So we refer to these as the derived corridors. So kind of like you see in this map here, the shape file, in that case of high, medium, and low maps, corridors. The raw GPS data is not available through the Atlas. We're happy to connect you to the data providers who have collected that data if someone is interested in raw data for like research. But our approach is to analyze the raw data that are shared with us internally, create the migration maps, the derived corridor files, and then make those publicly available. So on the website, you'll find those files, the fact sheets, and the maps.
Right. Yeah. So again, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar enough with this question and answer system to understand how I can see the comments, but I'm just going to keep on moving through these. Neil's got a question here, which is talking about sort of this cross-pollination idea about how does this sort of link together GUM's resources with other large landscape scale connectivity for non-migratory species, almost like the umbrella style sort of thought of umbrella species in which they're conserving other species as well. Matt, are you comfortable with that question as well?
Well, honestly, Grant, I was thinking the Serengeti was probably the poster child.
Okay.
For this question.
Sure. Okay, I'll try and answer that one. So I think that's a great question. I mean, one of the situations is like, the system in which I work is the Serengeti Mara system. And I think what we do see there is that although the Serengeti was really preserved and, the protected area really defined by the extent of the migration in the 1970s, what we're actually seeing are these huge benefits of, I'd say more ecosystem level benefits, because these migrations are connecting quite often dry season or wet season, winter ranges with summer ranges. And if these areas are protected, then you are providing basically the corridors and the ecosystem capacity for other animals to move in those areas. So there is evidence of that in the past, and I think, moving forward, future, I think that would be something that we should be really thinking about is, by preserving these behaviors, these migratory behaviors, are we actually able to create or allow the animals to tell us where the corridors are, where the important connections are, and that may well benefit other species as well. So, up until now, a lot of the corridor work is not necessarily evidence-based in the sense of where an animal physically moves. And so there is this sort of this interesting overlap between where we think corridors exist and where animals think corridors exist, and overlaying those two aspects. So perhaps that's a good place to move on to the next question. Sylvia, insect migrations. No, not unless they're associated with ungulate migrations. So perhaps mosquitoes in the north, or tsetse flies in Serengeti and places, but not insects. Julian, targeted to CMS. What about policy and conservation planning of landscapes and migrations for which there are no or very few movement tracking data to map to such pathways? So this is really, I guess, a question directed to the CMS staff about the policy and conservation planning of landscapes and migrations for which there are very few movement tracking data. Amy, are you comfortable answering that question? Is that okay for you? Yeah, maybe could we just ask Amy to be unmuted?
Sure, and I'd be happy if Claire wants to jump in, but I think, the policy and the data are slightly separate, because we can, in terms of the migration data, we have a lot of work on policy across landscapes, even with having imperfect data, is what I mean. And so I think Clara gave some great examples of some of our, very broad landscape and initiatives, which involve the range states around multiple species. And the idea there is to identify, key threats, what we know about the species, identify priorities for action among all of those range states. But having the data, if we don't have it, would be obviously a huge benefit for the reasons that many have already spoken. And in fact, I was smiling when you were answering the last question, because one thing I think we should be linking this discussion to is, in fact, the Convention on Biological Diversity and this new global biodiversity framework, where there is this 30 by 30 target that I mentioned. And CMS, we've been making this point throughout the development of that framework, which is when you decide what to protect, you should really be looking at this topic of connectivity and animal movement, because otherwise you might not be protecting the areas that really are most critical for ecosystems. And I think the maps that we saw in South Sudan just a minute ago really illustrate that vividly, where you see areas where are protected, but then there's so much movement outside of those areas. And if we don't do anything for those areas, if there's nothing done, then there could be huge disruption of the species. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. That was well answered. Lisa, I'm not too sure if Lisa is still online, but we've got a question for you if you're still here. And it's Mohammed, who's asking about options for conservation activities, how to get support for on-the-ground activities, perhaps World Bank's role in some of this. Lisa, are you able to answer that question?
Sure,
Yeah.
Grant. So I'm not sure where you're from, Mohammed, but the Global Wildlife Program, as I mentioned, financed by Global Environment Facility. So there, funding goes to national governments. So the key starting point would be, reach out to the GEF operational focal point. You can find the lists online. But for smaller scale funding, I'd also suggest looking into the GEF Small Grants Program, which you'd also be able to find online, and that's implemented by the UN Development Program.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. And probably a lot of people making notes of that as well. At least I hope so. Colson, yeah, this is a good question, and this is a challenging question. Would the GUM be able to quantify the CMS language of seriously impede? I don't know, Clara and Amy, are you? Do you want to try and take that question on? It's a bit of a challenging question. This is what we mean by seriously impede, and whether GUM can feed into that.
I don't know, Amy, if you want to respond to that question.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a difficult question. I think that phrase, like many, in the policy world, it's a legal concept, but it's informed by data, so I think it's hard to sort of generalize. I don't know offhand, if we define that at the international level, but certainly, at the national level, if you look at different national legislation and regulations that implement CMS and other wildlife management policy, those kinds of concepts emerge. So it's a really good question, and I think we'll take a hard look at that following the webinar. So thanks for it.
Great. Grant, I wonder if maybe we might ask Nandia to just give a quick thumbnail sketch of the work they're doing to quantify the barrier effects with their tracking data with Mongol and gazelle and Kulan, because they're really sort of addressing this question quantitatively.
That's a really good point. Yeah, Nandia, do you want to speak to that? Are you still here, Nandia?
You need to unmute her, I think.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, there is a rapid development happening in the Kulan habitat. At the moment, researchers are working together, including NGOs, international and Mongolian NGOs, and some stakeholders, work together to compile, for example, crossing structure data along these railways, and also using the pre and post-construction GPS tracking data of Kulan and Goitr's gazelle in this region to know what kind of behavior they show when they encounter those new railways in their habitat. So we are using the Bay behavior analysis to show basically how each individual responds to new range infrastructure in their habitat, whether they are tracing along these railways or bouncing, or maybe they find suitable crossing structure to cross, or how many railways they encounter during their movement in 2 months or 3 months, and so on. And based on all these quantitative analysis, now we are trying to recommend the monitoring action after the construction. For example, it's essential to identify those existing crossing structures are effective or not, and so on.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good sort of illustration of using data to actually answer those types of questions. So thanks for that, Nandi. Lacey's got a question about whether the derived tracks might be available for other repositories such as GBIF or MoveBank. Perhaps I can start by answering that. A lot of the collaborators that we have, we encourage them to upload their data onto MoveBank. And which is where we can pull the data from and create these the derived tracks from these corridor tracks. We don't necessarily put those back onto MoveBank because MoveBank has houses the raw data, and that raw data belongs to the owners or the collectors of that data. We haven't really considered about repositories like GBIF, but definitely web links between the two would be really useful. I don't know if anybody has any other comments on GBIF and MoveBank.
I guess I would just say, Grant, that the way the atlas is set up, the migrations don't stand alone. They're there with the fact sheets, they're there with the maps. And that's really important because those fact sheets have been written by the people on the ground who have collected the data. And so we have a philosophy of sort of pointing people back to the atlas so that they can get the full context of, the people that are involved, the agencies, the NGOs that are involved, people who have collected the data, the folks that know these situations on the ground, rather than just, having a migration sort of GIS feature that you can download that doesn't have all of that context associated with it. So that's the approach that we've taken.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the idea that those fact sheets are referenceable, that they are sort of the best state of knowledge to date on that population of migratory animal. That's a good point. Thanks for that, Lacey. Casey's got a question really about sort of the knowledge gap awareness, the top 20 species that need tracking and using this to raise awareness. Actually, Casey, it's a good question. We are in the middle of kind of doing basically that, a knowledge gap assessment, asking, right, how many ungulates in the world are there? Of these ungulates, how many are migrating? Of the ungulates that we know are migrating, how many of those are threatened or near threatened, threatened with extinction? And also, of the ones that, of all those migratory species, there's actually 259, I can tell you now, how many of those are actually unknown to migrate? And there's at least, it's over 70 species that we have no idea whether they migrate or not. That's species level, not even by population. So there is a lot of unknown there. And we're in the process of actually trying to do, I guess, a preliminary knowledge gap assessment, like where are the big unknowns when it comes to ungulate migration. So thanks for that, Casey. It's a good point, and yeah, it's a good cattle prod for us to get on with doing some serious analysis and science again. Gregory, does GUME see a need for developing a public audience for these migrations on social media, or is it communication between professionals in the field sufficient? Also, how do non-party countries like the USA fit into GUME and the Atlas, since they aren't committed to achieve the goals of CMS? Two questions there, Gregory. Both of them are really good. So maybe communication, social media beyond just the professionals. Janie, how would you feel about answering that question? It seems like that might be something, at least the outreach, media, social side of things, maybe that's something that you would like to take a bash at answering. Is that good? Oh, we got to unmute Janie.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, I think that the short answer is yes, and it sort of ties to the question before about soliciting funding and using some of these early maps that we've put in the Atlas to raise awareness on the importance of tracking data and the value that it has for informing conservation and development plans. So I think that, yes, developing a public audience around these migrations would certainly support these efforts. There's a lot of migrations, like we've also touched on, that where there's knowledge of how animals are moving, but not yet the tracking data. And so I think that using whatever platforms we can to reach new partners, potential funding sources that could be directed directly to wildlife managers that have the capacity to initiate new studies on some of these populations that haven't been mapped would be tremendous, and something that is an outcome we want to see from our initiative for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Maybe just to add to that, I think what we've been seeing here is sort of what we would call the gold standard data, GPS data. But I think one of the things that we are really keen to get involved more in is other types of data that might be coming in, including indigenous knowledge and oral knowledge about where migrations once existed or do exist. And that might be a really good way of accessing it. So, Gregory, that's a good question. The issue of non-party countries like the USA, yeah, I don't quite know. Matt, do you want to try and field that question? Is that, or? Or maybe
I was
Clara.
gonna
Matt,
see
why
if
don't we give it a go
Clara-
and move on?
Yeah, I was gonna see if Clara or Amy would like to give just a brief overview about how non-parties interact with CMS.
Sure, I can talk to that. Well, first, when we look at a species that gets listed on CMS, we look at the entire range. So we're mapping where's the species found, and we invite in many cases. We try to bring all the range states together. So a good example recently is in the avian world is we have a thing called the Central Asian Flyway, and some countries there, it's one of the great flyways of the world, covering at least 30 countries, and some of those are parties, some are not, but we've had a range state meeting to develop actions for conservation and policy. So we try to invite and include, even if countries are not. There's also scientific work where that's the case. And we have specific policy instruments where even if there are non-parties to the treaty itself, we have sort of subsidiary, instruments. And a good example is in our oceans, we have several different agreements, for example, on sharks, a global agreement on sharks. And the US, for example, is a signatory to that and very active. So we have kind of lots of different tools and, ways of convening the countries, whether it's at the scientific, policy, and action levels.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thanks for that, Amy. And I suppose it kind of leads to the next question here from Julian, and that is migrations actually being in the US and being mapped. I guess this is really a question for you, Matt, and that is US Western migrations being mapped by USGS. Are they all going to be included? Are they already there? What sort of stage we're at? Matt, do you want to answer Julian's question about USGS and mapping the Western American migrations?
Yeah, and I think the short answer is we're not really sure. So as some of you may be aware, there's been an effort by the US federal government to map ungulate migrations in the Western US. USGS has been leading that effort. We've mapped over 200 migrations of deer, elk, horn, and other species. That exists in a sort of similar atlas, more annual reports. And there is one mule deer migration that has been mapped previously in that Western US effort that we included in the atlas. And I think the short answer here is it's going to be kind of on a case-by-case basis. There we need to interact with each state and see if they want to include their migration in the global atlas. What I'd love to see is maybe a curated list of some of the most iconic Western migrations in the Western US included in the global atlas. So we'll see that. That's, I think, what we'll work toward, and we'll see if we can get there.
Great. Okay, thanks, Matt. Sarah, I got a response. I think this is kind of in response to Lacey's question, actually, regarding MoveBank and GBIF. And maybe, Sarah, this might be something that we need to come back to, sort of how this is all going to be linked together. Really about sort of data contributors and how, it's sort of, I guess, this movement of information going back and forth. Yeah, Clara, you had a comment here that maybe you would like to say? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And actually, we have also been asked to look into centralizing, different data sources, different information, and yeah, that is something that we are going to try maybe to do. Obviously, also pending on what researchers are willing to share, but at least to provide some sort of library within the CMS website where these different resources can be accessed. So yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. That's really good to know. Thank you for that. Yeah, hopefully, Lacey, that also answers some of your questions, and maybe the links between Lacey, Sarah, and Clara. Perhaps need to come back and revisit these connections again. Yeah, Osgood. While collecting and monitoring data, was it possible to collect data on animals that died as a result of accidents during migration? Was it aimed to collect such data directly or indirectly in the study? Yeah, maybe I can start with the response there and maybe pass it on as well. In fact, all of the data that are used in the atlases come from independent researchers who have and curate that data set themselves and would have information about specific individuals, males, females, age of those animals, who died, who survived. It's generally part of sort of ongoing research projects. And so while we don't archive that data in our metadata, I would say the metadata, we can connect people who are interested with that with the data providers. And in those situations, we would encourage you to speak directly with the researcher in question. So we don't actually archive that information directly on Guillaume, but I think we can connect you with data providers. Anybody else want to comment on Osgood's question or comment there?
Yeah, and Grant, just to clarify, Guillaume doesn't share the raw GPS data, only the migration maps. So basically the raw GPS data goes back to the data providers after they've shared it internally with Guillaume.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I think that we've gone half an hour over. It's been great. And I realize that a lot of you, it's going to be very late. And I think perhaps what we should do is thank everybody for participating. I also want to thank a lot of the Guillaume team here, Janie, Aidan, Stefan, Melinda, Ian, for making this happen behind the scenes. A really great job. And a big thanks to all the contributors to Guillaume, and a thank you also to everybody who's participated here, to the panel for fielding some tricky questions and also motivating questions. So thanks again, everybody, and really great to see you. Please click on the atlas. Please use it, and we'll update you in the coming months as things progress.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers now.
Well done.
Bye.